In the dark night of a small town, this little girl was praying upstairs. Suddenly, she heard her grandmother's voice outside the window. She immediately went to pull up the curtain and found that it was her beloved grandmother outside. The grandmother said that she was cold and wanted to go inside to warm up. The innocent little girl was not alert at all and was about to open the window. When her mother ran upstairs, it was too late. The next day, the drunken husband returned home. He saw many people standing in front of his house, thinking that there must be some kind of party today. As soon as the husband arrived, a policeman named Stephen came out from inside. Stephen immediately went up to slap the husband, then questioned him why there were children in the house, but the window was not nailed down. Before the drunk husband could explain, Stephen dragged him upstairs. The husband saw a horrifying scene as soon as he entered the room. The wife died tragically at the bedside, and the daughter's body had all her organs were gouged out. The drunken husband woke up to reality and felt extremely regretful. He did not dare to look straight at his wife and children. Stephen was furious and wanted to shoot the husband to death on the spot. But thinking about the fact that he had just lost his family, Stephen could not bear to do it. Stephen ordered his subordinates to put the husband in prison to await trial, then handed over the funeral to the priest. It turned out that this was a town with many strange things. Every time the sun set, Stephen would hold the bell and ring it continuously. When the villagers heard the bell, they would immediately return home and close the door, then gently touch the black stone as a habit. The reason they did this was because at night, this village would have terrifying man-eating monsters appear. Only by hiding in their houses and hanging up the black stone could the villagers survive. But the family of that drunken husband, unfortunately, met with calamity. Just because he did not stay home to protect his wife and children, the next day, the husband had to endure the most severe punishment in the town. That was to stay in the iron house for one night without the black stone to protect him. However, before the execution date, Stephen could not bear to lock the husband in the iron house. That way, he would definitely be eaten by the monster. Stephen discussed with the priest, planning to spare the husband. Stephen thought that the believers of the merciful God would support him, but unexpectedly, the priest firmly opposed, because if the husband was not punished, the iron house would not be enough to deter the people. The village would definitely become a place full of fear. Stephen was helpless when he heard what the priest said. He could only curse and leave the church, but Stephen still did not give up. He returned to the house where the husband was being held, secretly throwing him a blessing stone. Hoping that the stone could save the husband's life, Stephen decided to go and ask the villagers to spare the husband. But the husband had lost his wife and children, so he didn't want to live anymore. He returned the stone to Stephen and said that he was willing to accept the punishment. At this point, Stephen knew that there was no way to save him. After the sun set, the husband entered the iron house under the villagers' gazes. Stephen looked at him regretfully one last time and then closed the door. When locking the door, Stephen intentionally added another layer of lock. When the night was gradually falling, everyone quietly returned home. Only the husband was left trembling alone in the iron house. He looked outside and saw that there was no one there, so he breathed a sigh of relief. But the peace did not last long. Monsters had begun to gather around the house. The sound of talking and laughing surrounded the iron house. They even transformed into the form of his dead wife and daughter, causing the husband's will to gradually collapse. He sat down on the ground and burst into tears. Immediately after, the monsters destroyed the iron house and ate him. The next day, the town held a funeral for that family. But at this time, a strange mobile car arrived in town and attracted everyone's attention. The family of 4 in the car also noticed the strange eyes of the villagers. The man mustered up the courage to get out of the car and ask for directions, but no one answered him. Until the man met Stephen. Jim asked for directions to the highway. Stephen asked him back that if he was bringing his family. Jim answered yes, and saw Stephen was stunned for a few seconds. Then Stephen's expression became a bit unnatural, and he said that just go straight. Jim thanked him and left. Jim's family continued driving through the dense forest. However, after driving for a while, Jim found himself returning to the village. Jim thought he had accidentally gone in a circle. He tried to drive forward again. However, this time, he still returned to the village. Jim's family began to worry. They decided to turn around the car, intending to return to the old road. However, while driving, they encountered another black car driving in the opposite direction. The two cars lost control and crashed into each other. As a result, Jim's family was thrown into the bushes by the roadside. The owner of the black car was also seriously injured. The man tried to walk into the village to ask for help. He was then taken to the infirmary to have his wound bandaged. Although it was almost dark, Stephen Stephen still decided to go into the forest to save Jim's family. When he arrived, Stephen discovered that there was another man in the black car. He introduced himself as Jade. He said that he was traveling with his best friend when the accident happened. Stephen saw that Jade appeared unharmed, so he left him there and rushed to Jim's family. At that time, they were stuck in the car. The son, Ethan, had an iron bar stuck through his leg. Stephen tried to get into the car and carried them out, one by one. Meanwhile, Stephen's son, Ellis, upon hearing about the accident, quickly drove there with the priest, Nurse Christie, and Deputy Kenny to help. With their help, 3 of Jim's family members were lucky to escape. Only Ethan was left in the car. Nurse Christie said that surgery was needed to remove the foreign object from Ethan's leg. This would take at least an hour. However, it was almost dark. Stephen decided to stay in the car with Christie and Jim to perform the surgery. The others quickly returned to the village before the sun set. The 3 of them then got into the car. Before the surgery, Stephen placed a small stone in front of the door. He said that this would protect them from them. Jim listened, but still did not understand what it meant. At this time, Jim heard voices outside. Jim was about to open the door, but was stopped by Stephen. Stephen said that no matter what happened, do not open the door, otherwise, all of them would die. Stephen then looked outside, and found that there were many people standing around the car looking in. Stephen knew clearly that they were not humans. Meanwhile, the rest of the people were on their way back to the village. Along the way, the car unfortunately got a flat tire. They had no choice but to run back to the village before the monsters appeared. They then ran to the communal house. This was a collective housing area for homeless people. The group outside kept knocking on the door. However, the people inside did not dare to open the door because they were afraid that the group were monsters. The real monsters had appeared. They slowly approached. Julia suddenly saw her dead boyfriend. The girl was about to step forward, but was stopped by Kenny in time. At this time, the owner of the shared house, Donna, immediately ordered the door to be opened. Thanks to her, the group was lucky to narrowly escape death. Donna then took the group back to their room to rest. She also told Tabby everything about the secret of this village. It turned out that the residents of this place had also encountered the same situation as Tabby's family. They accidentally got lost in the village and could not find their way out. Every evening, monsters would appear in the forest in the form of dead relatives. They would lure the people in the house to open the door. After that, the monsters would torture and eat their organs. The only way to stop the monsters is to put a stone in front of the door. The monsters will not be able to enter when they see it. A few hours ago at the infirmary, the man driving the black car was lying down to recover. Suddenly, a strange girl appeared. She was Sarah, a resident of the village. The man did not understand what Sarah was doing here. Suddenly, she took an iron bar and stabbed it into the man's throat, causing him to die instantly. After killing the man, Sarah looked scared. She kept mumbling as if she was talking to someone. At night, when the nurse came in to check, she saw a horrifying scene. The nurse was about to run out when she discovered that the door had been wide open for some time. The monsters quickly entered. The nurse was scared and ran down to the basement to hide. The next morning, after a busy night, Nurse Christie finally performed a successful surgery on Ethan. The boy was temporarily out of danger. Jim's family also reunited, thinking that everything had been resolved smoothly. However, when entering the infirmary, the villagers discovered that the nurse had died. She had been eaten by monsters. Kenny couldn't believe his eyes. Kenny's father had also been killed. He was sick, so he went to the infirmary for treatment. Unfortunately, he became a victim of the monsters. Kenny was extremely angry. He didn't know why the infirmary door was opened in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, Ethan was lying in the communal house recovering. Suddenly, he saw a boy about his age, wearing a white outfit, standing outside the window. Ethan then stepped outside and saw an old man. He was Victor, the first person to set foot in this town. Every day, Victor went to the side of the house and measured something by himself. Ethan asked Victor if there were any boys living nearby. Victor said there were no other children besides Ethan. Ethan was about to ask more when Julia called him into the house. Julia felt that there was something strange about the old man. That afternoon, the villagers gathered together to welcome the new residents, who were the Jim family and a man named Jade. Jim was given the house which Stephen handed over, where the mother and her daughter had just passed away before. However, Julia did not want to live with her parents. She wanted to live in a shared house with friends her own age. Julia had long disliked her family. Tabby tried to persuade her, but it was completely useless. Meanwhile, Jade had not found a a place of her own, so Deputy Kenny let him stay at his house for a few days. But the next day, Jade accidentally discovered a secret underground cellar. As soon as she stepped down, Jade was horrified to see a rotting corpse. However, when he looked back, the corpse had disappeared. Instead, a strange-shaped symbol appeared on the wall. Jade hurriedly ran to Kenny to warn him. However, when the two of them returned, everything had returned to normal, just a normal cellar. Jade said that he had seen the corpse with his own eyes. However, Kenny just thought that Jade was lightheaded. Anyone who had just arrived at this village would have headaches and an unstable mind. Kenny then showed Jade the mystery of the village. Kenny said that the residents here had all lived in different places, even thousands of kilometers away. However, for some reason they had all wandered into the same village. Perhaps this place was not on the map at all, but was just a mysterious dimension that had not been explored. At that moment, the radio on the table suddenly made a noise. Kenny said that it happened often. However, Jade immediately ran to hug the radio and quickly left. Jade seemed to have come up with a plan. On Jim's side that day, Jim took Ethan to the community house for breakfast. This place was managed by Kenny's mother. She cooked delicious food every day to serve everyone. Sarah also often came here to help. While Jim was busy going to the bathroom, a man named Victor came to see Ethan. Victor gave Ethan a picture which showed a child wearing white clothes. It was the boy that Ethan had seen outside the community house. Victor said that he had seen this child before and wanted to go into the forest with Ethan to find him. At the same time, Jim came out of the bathroom. He saw Victor and immediately ran over to curse. Jim threatened Victor not to come near his son. Victor had no choice but to leave. That afternoon, while Jim and his wife were sitting outside talking, Victor secretly went to the back of the house. He wanted to go into the forest with Ethan right now. Ethan naively thought that the two of them were about to have an exciting adventure, so he excitedly followed Victor. They went deep into the forest, a place that had never been explored before. Most of the people were afraid of monsters, so they didn't dare to go far. While walking, Victor suddenly saw the boy in white from the day before, so he quickly chased after him. The two of them then went to a big tree. There was a deep hole in the middle of the tree trunk. Victor tried to throw a rock into the hole. Suddenly, it fell from above their heads. They couldn't believe their eyes, not understanding what strange thing was happening here. Meanwhile, Jim and his wife discovered Ethan missing. The back door was wide open. They knew something was wrong, so they ran into the woods to search. The two of them walked while calling Ethan's name. The noise woke up the pack of hounds in the woods. They surrounded Jim and his wife. In the critical moment, a gunshot rang out, causing the hounds to run away. It was Victor, who had secretly brought a gun with him for defense. Jim was extremely angry and wanted to rush in and kill Victor. However, because Victor had a gun, he did not dare to act rashly. After the trip, Victor returned to his house. He brought out the pictures he had drawn before, including pictures of the hounds. Memories suddenly flooded back. Many years ago, Victor was the first person to set foot in this village. At that time, he was still a boy. When he arrived, he saw corpses all around. They were being eaten by the hounds. Victor suddenly discovered a boy in white. The boy happily sat playing on the swing, then disappeared without a trace. That memory made Victor remember forever. He always wanted to find out the truth about who that mysterious boy was. The next day, Jim's family went to the public house to have breakfast again. While everyone was chatting happily, Sarah suddenly felt a great pain in her hand. Not long after, the words "kill the child" appeared on Sarah's arm. Sarah looked at Ethan in panic. After that, Sarah had an epileptic seizure and fell to the ground unconscious. When she woke up, she found herself in the infirmary. Christy felt worried about Sarah, but she said she just had a slight headache. Sarah's younger brother Nathan learned about this news. Nathan heard that his older sister had fainted and immediately ran to the infirmary. Nathan had known about what Sarah had done for a long time, but Nathan did not report it to Stephen and quietly stayed by his older sister's side to protect her. But recently, Sarah has been acting strangely, making Nathan extremely worried. Not long after leaving the hospital, Sarah took a knife and went to Jim's house. She pretended to visit Ethan and invited him to visit her farm. Ethan was excited and agreed. Tabby saw that and decided to follow her son. They did not know that Sarah was preparing an extremely terrifying murder plot. After arriving at the farm, Sarah pretended to lure Tabby into the warehouse. She took advantage of the moment when Tabby was not paying attention to close the door and lock it. Then, Sarah took a knife and went to Ethan, intending to kill him. However, Nathan returned home in time. Seeing this scene, she immediately ran to stop her. While the two were struggling, Sarah accidentally slashed Nathan's neck. Nathan only had time to say a few words before quickly dying. At this time, the villagers heard the scream and ran over. Sarah hurriedly ran into the forest. The incident was quickly exposed. Jim angrily scolded Stephen for for always causing trouble for his family. Stephen said that he had sent people to look for Sarah, but there was no trace. By nightfall, Sarah would definitely be eaten by the monsters. As the days passed, no one saw Sarah anywhere. Everyone thought she had died in the forest. However, no one expected that Sarah was locked in the basement of the priest's house. It turned out that a few days before, Nathan had secretly gone to the priest and told him everything his older sister had done, including the fact that Sarah heard a strange voice in her head. The priest felt that this matter was not simple, so he secretly locked Sarah in the basement to ask some more questions. Sarah said that when she first arrived in this town, she heard a strange voice in her head. It said that if she did what it said, the villagers would soon return home. Sarah thought it was true, so she did it, even doing the evil things she didn't dare to think of. After hearing it, the priest looked doubtful. He had long believed that this village was not real, but a fantasy world created from book number 74 of the Bible. The voice Sarah heard might be that of God, the creator of life. If this was true, then Sarah possessed an extremely special ability that would be very necessary in the future. At the same time, Sarah suddenly had a severe pain, so she took out a pen and scribbled on a piece of paper. Sarah said that this was proof that the voice in her head was real. The priest looked at the paper and saw a strange drawing. He then went to the empty lot, dug up a cloth bag from the ground. It was the thing the priest had buried when he first arrived at this village. There is a chocolate bar in the bag. Surprisingly, the drawing on the paper was exactly the same as the logo on the chocolate bar. The priest was shocked when he saw it. Meanwhile, Jim and his wife were investigating the items in the house. They felt strange because the core of the wire had nothing inside. The plug was broken on one side. However, the electric light was still on normally. So where did this electricity come from? While they were thinking, Jade ran over. Jade wanted to create a radio receiver with Jim. If they could catch the signal from outside, they would prove that they were somewhere on Earth. Since the village had no usable items, the two went to the black car to get the assembly parts. After a hard day, they finally successfully created a radio receiver. However, it needed to be placed in a high place to work. Jim quickly climbed up the big tree to place the radio receiver. Jade, who was standing below, suddenly discovered the tree was bleeding. Looking up, he was horrified to see it full of dead bodies. The same strange symbol appeared on the tree trunk as the day before. At the same time, a soldier appeared from behind. He held a gun and threatened Jade, causing him to run into the forest. Jade didn't know how far she had run, but when he looked back, he saw Jim in front of him. The surrounding scenery also returned to normal. Jade was scared and ran away. As for Jim, after placing the receiver on the tree, he turned it on to use it. However, after a while of broadcasting his voice outside, there was still no response. Jim returned home in frustration. Going down to the basement, he found Tabby digging a hole. She said that all the house's electrical wires led underground. There must be something hidden underneath. Meanwhile, Jade was sitting in the restaurant, constantly drawing the strange symbol he had seen on the tree trunk. At this moment, Kenny's mother appeared. She looked at the symbol and realized she had seen it somewhere. Kenny's mother then led Jade into the storage room. There, they discovered that the strange symbol was very similar to the one in an ancient book. The mystery was gradually revealed. That night, in the communal house, while everyone was fast asleep, a man secretly went up the stairs, opened the window and looked outside. There was a monster in the form of a beautiful woman. She asked when she could go inside. The man smiled after hearing that. His name was Kevin, a quiet person, usually did not like to interact with people around, and was always alone. No one knew that Kevin was a pervert. Every night, he secretly went to the window and talked to a monster in the form of a beautiful, young woman. The monster often tried to seduce Kevin to let her in. That day was a special day, once a year. The people in the communal house would gather to celebrate the living and also to remember the dead. They did not know that a terrible tragedy would happen tonight. Meanwhile, the priest came to Stephen to tell him everything about Sarah and the mysterious voice in her head. At first, Stephen was skeptical. The priest then brought the drawing and the chocolate bar. He said that these were the things he had buried when he first arrived in the village. Sarah had arrived after the priest, so logically, she could not know about these things, unless the voice in her head was real. After listening, Stephen said that he also had a plan. That was to go into the forest by himself for a few days to find a way out. He could not stay in this village forever. At first, the villagers were afraid of the monsters and did not dare to enter the forest. However, if they carried a protective stone, they might be safe from the monsters. Although he had never tried this method before, Stephen decided to take the risk. Seeing this, the priest immediately told that Sarah and himself would go with Stephen. Sarah had mysterious abilities that might be useful. Meanwhile, at the communal house, Kevin, after many days of being seduced by the monster, finally opened the door to let it in. While the two were kissing, the monster suddenly bit Kevin's mouth. Before he could call for help, the monster rushed forward and killed him. The others were happily eating and partying, not knowing that the whole house was surrounded by monsters. A moment later, an Asian girl was about to go back to her room to sleep. As soon as she entered the room, she was immediately surrounded by monsters. They captured the girl and killed her on the spot. The people around who knew what had happened immediately raised the alarm. Everyone was scared and ran away. The monsters were enjoying hunting the poor villagers. The scene was extremely chaotic. At this time, Julia was with Victor. Julia wanted to ask him some questions about the village. At that moment, the alarm bell rang. Victor seemed to have known what was going to happen and had prepared everything. He threw a rope through the window, then escaped outside with Julia. While everyone was running away, Victor led Julia into the forest alone. They went to the big tree. Victor told Julia to jump into the tree trunk. It would lead her to another safe place. Before Julia could do anything, Victor pushed her inside. Julia screamed in panic. A moment later, she looked back and saw herself standing in a wooden cabinet inside an abandoned cellar outside the village, and Victor had disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, the people who were attacked at the communal house were running to find a place to hide. They went to Stephen's house to ask for a place to stay for the night. While the priest was helping the people around, suddenly, a monster suddenly rushed over and slashed his neck. Stephen immediately ran to help, quickly brought the priest into the house. However, it was too late. The priest bled to death. No one could help. After that night, the whole village was plunged into grief. 14 people were killed and eaten by the monster. Their bodies were scattered all over the village. This made Stephen want to carry out his plan immediately. Before leaving, Stephen left all the control to Kenny. Kenny was very sad but could do nothing more. Stephen then went to the infirmary to visit his son Ellis. After yesterday's incident, Ellis was lucky to only be slightly injured. Ellis had not been close to his father for a long time. He still could not forgive Stephen for the incident in the past. The past suddenly came back. Many years ago, when Stephen was taking his wife and Ellis on a trip, they were blocked by a large tree. After searching for another way, the three of them accidentally got lost into the village. At that time, the people here had not found the protective stone. Their lives were extremely difficult. Food and water were very scarce. At night, when monsters appeared, the people could only find hidden places to hide, hoping that they would not find them. Every day in the village, there were corpses of people who were unfortunately discovered and eaten by monsters. Stephen decided to reform this place. He took the lead in managing the people here. One day, Stephen went into the forest and discovered a live goat. The villagers were completely surprised. Stephen said that he had also found chickens and other livestock. If they could raise livestock, their food supply would be guaranteed. So Stephen risked his life and went into the forest alone to hunt animals. One day, Stephen accidentally saw a hunting dog. It suddenly ran away, causing Stephen to chase after it, but in the end, Stephen got lost. It gradually got dark. Stephen could not find his way back to the village and was extremely scared. At that moment, Stephen accidentally slipped and fell into a cave. Before Stephen could react, monsters appeared outside. They slowly approached. Stephen thought he was about to die. However, the monsters only looked at him for a moment and then left. Only then did Stephen realize that the cave was filled with strangely shaped black stones. The next morning, Stephen hurried back to the village. As soon as he arrived, he heard gunshots. It was Stephen's wife. She was holding a gun and attacking the people around her, saying that this place was just a dream. Only by dying could she return to reality. Stephen hurriedly took the gun and ran over to ask her to put it down. The wife couldn't believe it when she saw her husband alive, thinking that she was dreaming. The wife then took the gun and was about to attack someone else. Stephen had no choice but to shoot his wife. After that incident, the villagers found a way to protect themselves from the monsters. However, Stephen lost the wife he loved the most. Back in reality, Ellis finally forgave Stephen. Ellis knew that Stephen had no choice but to kill the wife. Stephen was also the one who found the protective stone. He had helped the villagers a lot. The father and son then hugged each other and said goodbye. Before leaving for the forest, Stephen secretly went to the priest's basement and took Sarah with him. Stephen believed what the priest had said about Sarah. Maybe Sarah would be the key to solving everything. As for Jim, after the failure of the radio receiver, Jim decided to do another project. This time, Jim designed a radio antenna himself. He planned to put it on the roof of the communal house. If this project was successful, there was a chance that they would be able to contact the outside world. Jim then presented his plan to the villagers. Most of them agreed with his idea and decided to help. In the following days, everyone worked together to design the radio antenna. Although they said there was hope, many villagers knew that this was just a pipe dream. This project will fail again, and everything will collapse again. Some people even lost hope of living and left this world silently. On Jade's side, after finding the mysterious symbol sketchbook, he spent many days in her room studying it. Finally, Jade suddenly realized that there were 2 pages stuck together in the notebook. After separating it, Jade found an old photo. It was a picture of a strange man. Kenny's mother was extremely surprised when she looked at it. In the corner of the photo was Victor when he was young. So Victor was not the first person to come to this village, as he said. Jade then hurriedly went everywhere to find Victor. However, he had been missing since that day until now. Meanwhile, Stephen and Sarah went deep into the forest. They found a big tree. On it hung bottles containing pieces of paper. Sarah had a severe headache when she saw it. Then she fell down and fainted. When she woke up, it was already dark. The 2 were sitting in the tent. Stephen said that he had seen the pieces of paper in the bottle. They all had the same number, 1864, written on them. More than 100 years ago, what happened here? Sarah then said that while she was unconscious, she heard a woman's voice. The woman advised Stephen to stop and not go deeper into the forest. There were things more terrifying than monsters there. The 2 still didn't know what to do when suddenly the ground started shaking violently. The tent seemed to be about to collapse. As soon as the earthquake stopped, a blinding light appeared through the tent. The 2 then walked outside and saw that it was already morning. There were white patches all around. Stephen suddenly heard a strange sound. He tried to go to where the sound came from and saw the image of his wife tied to a tree. His wife suddenly woke up and rushed to grab Stephen's hand, causing him to panic and run away. At this time, spiders from all over the web began to crawl out, clinging and biting Stephen. Sarah quickly ran to help. After a while, she chased them all away. Because Stephen was bitten by a spider, his body began to release poison, causing him great pain. However, they did not give up and decided to continue. Meanwhile, Jim finally succeeded in making a signal antenna. They placed it on the roof of the communal house to the cheers of everyone. Thanks to the power source connected to the devices in the village, the antenna was able to function normally. Before everyone could celebrate, a sudden storm came from afar. Jim tried to connect to the signal outside. He was extremely happy when he heard a man's voice. Everyone thought that everyone was about to be saved. However, the man suddenly said that Jim's wife should not have dug that hole. Jim was so shocked that he ran home. It turned out that Tabby had been digging a hole in the basement of the house for many days. Suddenly, it started to shake. The ground cracked, causing Tabby to fall straight down. Tabby did not understand what was happening when Victor suddenly came from afar. He said that he knew that Tabby would fall down here, so he was waiting. Victor then revealed that this cave was where the monsters were hiding, and they had painted all over the walls. It turned out that the monsters had been deep underground for a long time, under the people's feet, without them knowing. Victor then quickly took Tabby away from there before it collapsed. A moment later, Jim returned to find a hole in the floor. He tried calling Tabby's name, but there was no response at all. As for Stephen and Sarah, after many attempts, they finally discovered a mysterious lighthouse on a high hill. However, Stephen's injuries were too severe to continue. While not knowing what to do, Sarah suddenly saw a boy in white. The boy pointed to a big tree, saying that if she went in there, Sarah would be safe. Sarah heard it, immediately brought Stephen to the tree, then pushed Stephen into the black hole, thinking that Stephen had safely returned to the village, but the place Stephen arrived at was 4 closed walls with no way out. Stephen tried to call for help, but no one heard. At this time, a group of people on a bus appeared out of nowhere in the forest. As usual, they were blocked by a big tree. The female driver had no choice but to turn around. The car then drove straight into the village. While the passengers were still acting normal, a young man named Elgin was immediately scared when he saw the scene outside. He asked the female driver to leave immediately. Meanwhile, in the communal house, the people were quickly cleaning up the components of the receiver. The storm in the distance immediately hit, causing the equipment in the house to continuously short-circuit. While Jade was cleaning, he suddenly saw a strange bus in the distance. Jade immediately informed the people around. Kenny and Donna immediately went to meet the new guests. They still thought this was a normal village. Meanwhile, the young man Elgin was extremely worried. Elgin said that he had seen this place in his dream. The young woman named Mari and the young man named Brick kept reassuring Elgin and advised Elgin to get off the bus to get some fresh air. Meanwhile, a young man named Randall was very angry because Elgin had caused chaos and even loudly wanted to beat Elgin. As for Julia, after returning home, she discovered that her mother had disappeared. There was a deep hole in the basement. Jim worriedly said that Tabby might have fallen down. Julia immediately ran to the crowd to ask for help to save her mother. The man at the bar immediately volunteered. Two passengers on the bus, Brick and Randall, also wanted to help. They went to the hole and were about to dig it up when suddenly the surrounding area shook violently. The house immediately collapsed in front of the people outside. They quickly ran to save the trapped group. Randall was fortunately not seriously injured. However, the remaining 3 people were crushed deep inside by rocks. Nurse Christie later appeared to give first aid to the injured. Christie suddenly discovered Mari in the group of passengers. She happily ran to hug Mari. It turned out that the two of them were lovers before. After many months of being missing, they finally met again in this village. Meanwhile, Tabby, after falling into the hole, unexpectedly met Victor again. The two walked along the underground path. Tabby walked a distance and discovered a suitcase. Inside was a white dress. They continued to go to a cave. This was the lair of the monsters. They were currently sleeping soundly. Tabby and Victor tried to keep quiet and did not dare to make a sound. At this moment, Victor accidentally discovered a doll and was extremely scared. Tabby tried to calm Victor down, then continued walking along the cave. At this time, they discovered that the monsters were getting more and more numerous. In the middle of the cave were stones stacked on top of each other. Tabby saw a strange cave, but as soon as they arrived, a child with a scary face suddenly appeared, causing Tabby to scream in fear. It was almost dark now. The monsters slowly woke up from their deep sleep. Victor and Tabby panicked and ran away from there. Luckily, they found the exit to the cave, which was outside the forest. Victor then took Tabby to an abandoned truck. This place was Victor's secret base that could be used as a shelter for the night to avoid being discovered by the monsters. Meanwhile, in the village, seeing that it was getting dark, Donna asked all the passengers to go into the house quickly. The female driver disagreed and said that she would take everyone out of here. Donna knew that there was not enough time to explain, so she immediately took out a gun and shot the tire. Then she ordered everyone to go inside quickly. Some passengers were scared and ran away. At this time, Jim knew that he could not escape from the house in time, so he advised Julia to leave quickly. Jim reassured Julia that if he hid down here, the monsters wouldn't find her. Julia didn't want to, but she had no choice but to leave. After everything settled down, Donna explained about this mysterious village. Every night, cannibal monsters appeared. Those who didn't go inside would be attacked by them. The group of passengers doubted Donna's words. However, because Donna was holding a gun, no one dared to fight back. Meanwhile, at Stephen's place, after trying to call for help, someone finally dropped a rope. Stephen quickly climbed up. Only then did he discover that he was locked in a cellar. Nearby was an old man tied up. Around him were many corpses in similar binding conditions. Stephen tried to ask the old man. However, the old man said that he had been tied up here for so long that he couldn't remember anything. Stephen wanted to free the old man. However, the chain was too tight to open. The old man then revealed that he was once a townsman. The monsters were not the most dangerous thing. There was a much more terrifying secret behind them. As soon as he finished speaking, a sudden sound of music rang out. Stephen discovered a music box nearby, with a symbol of a dancing woman. As soon as the music stopped, worms crawled under the old man's skin. The old man suddenly scratched Stephen's shoulder and said that his blood was now Stephen's blood. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man fell to the ground and died on the spot. Stephen panicked and ran away. When he realized, he found himself still in the forest. The cellar had now turned into an ancient ruin. It was almost dark now. Suddenly a dog came from somewhere and took Stephen to Victor and Tabby. The three had just met again not long ago, when suddenly, Elgin appeared from somewhere. Elgin was being chased by monsters. Stephen didn't think twice and let Elgin get on the car. Thanks to the stone he had with him, the four of them were lucky enough not to be attacked by the monsters. Elgin then told them about the bus trip, as well as the collapse of Jim's house. Tabby was extremely worried when she heard that her husband had an accident. Meanwhile in town, Ellis and his girlfriend were trying to find the passengers who had run away. At this time, the monsters had also appeared. They had no choice but to helplessly run into the house. The unfortunate passengers were being chased by the monsters. They were naive and didn't know what was happening before their eyes. These two passengers found a house. They had just entered for a short while when they heard a voice outside asking them to open the door. The two unsuspecting passengers followed suit. Meanwhile, at the bus stop, a monster found an old couple hiding behind the bus. The monster showed interest before pouncing on the two unfortunate victims. Outside, screams echoed everywhere. Randall wanted to go out to check, but was immediately stopped. Randall suddenly snatched Kenny's gun and ordered the people around to put their guns down. While everyone was still wondering what to do, there was a sudden knock on the door. Kenny quickly snatched the gun back and subdued Randall before he could cause more trouble. Outside, Jim and the bar owner were hiding under the house, trying not to make any noise. Suddenly, a young man named Brick woke up. Brick was so frightened that he saw his body being crushed by a pile of scrap metal that he shouted for help. The tavern owner tried to reassure Brick that nothing would happen. However, Brick, due to his severe injuries, began to cough up blood. After that, Brick could not hold on and died. At this time, a monster appeared from outside and attacked the tavern owner. Jim was so scared that he could only stay silent and did not dare to move. The next morning, everyone went out to check and discovered a horrifying scene. The tavern owner's body was lying in the middle of the yard. His stomach had been removed. Julia was worried about Jim and ran to the house. She breathed a sigh of relief when she learned that Jim was still alive. Jim was then quickly taken to the hospital to treat his injuries. Tabby's group had also returned to town at this time. Jim was extremely happy to see his wife alive. They hugged each other tightly. Meanwhile, the female driver, after witnessing her passengers being brutally murdered, believed what the villagers said. Stephen then appeared to explain the rules and welcome the newcomers. Randall was still angry about yesterday, so he didn't want to cooperate. However, Stephen only said a few threatening words, making Randall scared and obeying. Jade, after learning that Victor was still alive and in the village, went to see him, asking about the strange circular symbol he found in the notebook. However, Victor was scared as soon as he heard it. Victor said he didn't know anything about it and quickly left. After the house collapsed, Jim's family had nowhere to stay. Kenny's mother therefore let them stay at her house for a few days. Tabby and Julia then went to the warehouse to find some clothes to stockpile. But when the two left, Tabby suddenly saw two strange-looking children standing in the distance, staring at her. The story did not stop there. When she arrived at the front porch, Tabby found her son Ethan sitting and playing with blocks. In particular, the symbol Ethan had arranged was exactly the same as what Tabby had seen under the cave. At this time, the two children appeared in front of Tabby, making her extremely scared. Tabby thought that this was related to the monsters, so she went to the cave outside the forest alone, arranged the stones into the shape of a symbol. Suddenly, from afar, a series of children appeared from somewhere and rushed to hug Tabby. Tabby was startled and panicked. When she looked back, the children had disappeared. Outside the village, Kenny and Ellis were looking for food when they suddenly heard a noise nearby. They went to check and saw a girl sitting against a tree, her head pierced by an iron bar. The strange thing was that the girl was still alive. Nurse Christie ran over when she heard the news. The girl said she was one of the passengers on the bus. Last night, she and her husband went into a house and were lured by the monsters to open the door. They took the husband out, tortured him, and killed him, forcing the girl to witness everything. Christie observed and discovered that the iron bar had pierced through the girl's head. It was a miracle that she was still alive. However, there was no emergency equipment in this village. They had no choice but to let the girl die as gently as possible. Then Stephen appeared and used all his strength to remove the iron bar from the girl's head. After the girl screamed in pain, she finally died. The next day, when Kenny went to the priest's house to get some things, he suddenly heard a noise in the basement. Kenny went down to check and was surprised to see Sarah hiding underneath. Kenny immediately ran to tell Stephen. When Stephen heard what happened, he rushed to see Sarah. Sarah said that she had also crawled into the tree that day, like Stephen. However, the exit was this basement. Stephen tried to reassure Sarah that he would keep her safe here. Then Stephen told Kenny everything. He asked Kenny to keep this a secret and not tell anyone. But when Stephen just stepped out of the house, he felt extremely dizzy. Under Stephen's skin Worms were crawling continuously. Meanwhile, in the shared house, Randall had just arrived but did not respect anyone. He caused trouble with others all day. Randall was also lazy and refused to work, just lying on the sofa all day. Donna felt angry and chased Randall out of the shared house. Randall then became homeless, having to live alone on the bus. At night, monsters appeared around the bus. Randall cursed at them constantly when he saw it. However, he still did not dare to go out. A few days passed. Jim recovered from the accident. He continued to investigate the strange voice on the radio that he had heard a few days ago. Jim told Steven about this. Jim thought that this place might be a secret experiment of the government army, and the people in the village were the test subjects. Although it sounded absurd, it was very convincing. Not giving up, Jim continued to tell Donna his thoughts. However, Donna thought that for now, they shouldn't tell anyone about this unless they found solid evidence. Otherwise, everyone would panic. As for Kenny, because he wanted to confirm what Sarah had done, Kenny went down to the basement alone to meet Sarah. Sarah then couldn't bear it anymore, so she told everything she had done, including the night she opened the hospital door, causing Kenny's father to be brutally murdered by monsters. Kenny was extremely angry after knowing the truth. He was even more angry when Steven knew everything, but still protected Sarah. Kenny then threw away his police badge and left. The news of Sarah's survival quickly spread throughout the village. When Jim and Tabby found out, they went to see Sarah and cursed her continuously. They wanted Sarah to be sentenced to death. Steven had to intervene. Steven thought that Sarah was an important factor connected to this village. Sarah could be an important figure who could help everyone escape from here. Jim and Tabby were relieved when they heard that. Although Sarah was accepted to stay in the village, no one wanted to get close to her. Everyone thought that Sarah was a madman who killed her younger brother. Sarah returned to the old house to find Nathan's belongings. However, this place now had a new owner. They said that all of Sarah and her younger brother's belongings had been thrown into Kenny's mother's warehouse. Sarah had no choice but to go to the restaurant to meet Kenny's mother. Sarah apologized for what she had done. Kenny's mother was very angry, but still returned the package. Then she told Sarah never to come here again. When Sarah just stepped out, Kenny saw her. Kenny rushed over and grabbed the package from Sarah's hand and threw it all on the ground. Sarah tried to take back Nathan's old commemorative statue. However, Kenny immediately snatched it and smashed it into pieces. Kenny warned Sarah never to appear in front of him again. The people around saw it, but no one came to stop it. Only Elgin came to help collect the belongings. At this time, on Jade's side, after the radio station construction plan failed, Jade stayed alone in the house for the next few days, researching ways to escape the village. Jade often saw illusions of the mysterious man in the picture. He even saw a strange bleeding symbol. Jade didn't know what to do when Victor suddenly came to see him. After many days of thinking, Victor finally decided to tell Jade about the old stories. Then Victor took Jade to an empty lot. There were many broken cars. Victor said that the man in the picture was Christopher, a former resident of the village. Christopher was a cheerful person, so he was loved by the people around him. However, something happened when Christopher accidentally learned about the strange circular symbol in the book. From then on, Christopher became a different person, extremely crazy, and liked to kill people. All the villagers were killed by Christopher at that time. Only Victor survived because he hid in time in the basement. Victor advised Jade not to try to understand the circular symbol if you don't want to be corrupted. Meanwhile, at Steven's place, he went to the priest's old house. He found that the furniture had disappeared. In the middle of the house was the strange music box that Steven had seen in the basement. The music box played a song with a scary melody. A girl appeared and danced from somewhere. Steven just walked closer and was suddenly scared by the girl, causing him to wake up. Steven found himself at Kenny's mother's house again. Kenny saw that Steven looked tired, so he helped him home. On the way, they saw the yellow leaves on the trees gradually falling. This had never happened before in the town. Suddenly, Steven's arm was in pain. There were strange worms under his skin. The scary music from earlier was playing again. The girl appeared from the basement. However, it seemed that only Steven could see her. Steven turned around and saw that the girl had disappeared. A few days later, due to the arrival of new guests, the food in town was increasingly scarce. Donna estimated that they only had about a month's worth of food left. The storm had damaged the vegetables badly, and it would take time to grow a new crop. The scarcity of food also caused arguments among the people in the house. An angry man said that Elgin had intentionally stolen food from the kitchen. Despite Elgin's attempts to explain that he had none, the man still cursed him and wanted to kick all the new members out of the house. Ellis discovered the incident and ran over to stop him. During the struggle, the man accidentally stabbed Ellis in the stomach, causing a lot of blood to flow out. Everyone panicked panicked and planned to take Ellis to the infirmary, but it was already dark and full of monsters outside. Elgin volunteered to go out and get the car without thinking. He went straight to the parking lot and drove away before the monsters caught him. They then successfully reached the infirmary. Christy quickly put Ellis on the operating table. The wound was so severe that surgery was needed. However, due to the lack of blood reserves, more relatives were needed to draw blood. Stephen wanted to save his son, but he was worried that the terrible thing in his body would infect Ellis. At this time, the worms emerged again, causing Stephen great pain. He suddenly thought of a plan and ran outside alone, facing the monsters. Stephen used his knife to slash the monster's neck, then used his blood to press on the wound. Stephen felt the worms under his arm gradually transmitting to the monster. The monster initially laughed gleefully, not understanding what was going on, but suddenly its entire body changed and screamed in pain. The other monsters no longer cared about Stephen. He took the opportunity to run back into the house. At this time, Stephen's blood had returned to normal. Thanks to the timely blood transfusion, Ellis's surgery was also a success. The next morning, when everyone went out, they found that the monster from yesterday had died. Everyone wondered if the worms in Stephen's blood could kill these immortal monsters. Christy wanted to bring the monster's body inside to perform an autopsy to see what was inside the monster. They then placed the monster's body on the operating table. When she opened its belly, Christy was shocked to see that the monster had the same structure as a human body, except that the internal organs were all withered, as if it had been dead for a long time. Then Christy stabbed the gallbladder, and a yellow liquid flowed out from inside. Christy believed that the worms were still inside the monster, so its liquid could be a method to help destroy the monsters out there. While the others were working hard to maintain life, Jim still thought that this village was just a government experiment. Tabby was very disappointed to see her husband like that. Tabby advised Jim to regain his composure soon and go help the people around. Jim was standing outside and suddenly discovered a remote-controlled plane. It turned out to be Randall's. Randall said that the plane was a gift for a cousin. Jim suddenly had an idea, so he took Randall to his family's old car and searched inside for radio wave receivers. Jim thought that if the plane flew high enough, it would be possible to receive signals from further away. After a while of hard work, they finally succeeded in making the antenna. However, since it was just a toy plane, it couldn't carry too much weight on its body. Jim was disappointed. However, Randall had another way of thinking. Randall thought that if this was really a government experiment, they would definitely plant a spy inside the village. So Jim decided that tonight, he and Randall would hide inside the car and follow the whereabouts of the monsters to see where they went and what they did every night. On this side, Tabby went to see Jade and told him what happened in the underground cave. Tabby accidentally saw the circular symbol in the notebook. Tabby said that she also saw this in the monster cave. Maybe that Victor probably understood what it meant. The two then went to see Victor to question him again. However, Victor still refused to talk. Tabby tried to beg Victor and said this might be the only way to return home. Victor finally wavered. He took Tabby to an abandoned parking lot. There were photos that Victor had drawn years ago. As soon as he looked at the photos, memories from the past suddenly came flooding back. It turned out that Victor was not alone when he came here, but also had a younger sister. However, on that fateful night, Victor was so scared that he could not protect his sister, causing her to die a brutal death. Tabby looked through the photos and discovered a drawing of a strange tower. Victor said that it was a place where children were being held. Victor's mother considered that only by saving these children that they could escape the village. Meanwhile in the village, strange things began to happen. Elgin was bathing in the bathtub when he suddenly heard a strange music. A music box suddenly appeared in front of him. Before Elgin could understand what was happening, he was pulled under the water. A effigy with a scary face appeared in front of Elgin. As for Kenny, when he just got home, he heard the phone ringing. Inside was a man's voice. The other party kept repeating the same sentence. They touch, they break, they rob. No one here has freedom. As long as the music is still playing, they will never stop. Kenny did not understand what was going on. He looked at the pot of soup that was cooking on the stove. Inside were thousands of cicadas flying. Suddenly one of them flew over and bit Kenny's arm. He woke up with a start. Turned out to be just a dream. However, when Kenny looked at his arm, he found that it was bruised right where the cicadas had bitten him earlier. At this time, Stephen suddenly came to see Kenny. He wanted to go to the infirmary with Kenny, asking Christy to extract more liquid from the monster to make a weapon. As soon as they arrived, they found Mari extremely scared, saying that she heard something in the basement. When they went down to check, they were horrified to see a lot of cicadas surrounding the monster's body. Kenny saw them and immediately recognized them as the ones that appeared appeared in his dream. At this time, Donna also arrived. However, when she and Steven went down to the basement, there were no more cicadas. They discussed how to dispose of the monster's body. However, when the group was carrying the body out, Randall saw them from afar. Randall then went to see Donna alone, seemingly with a plan in mind. That afternoon, when Steven and the others had just returned to the village, they suddenly heard screams from a nearby house. They ran to check and discovered a horrifying scene. A woman's body was lying dead on the bed. The body was blown up and broken in an extremely terrifying way. The husband cried and said that his wife was sleeping and started talking in her sleep. Then, the body suddenly fell apart in front of him. When Steven asked what his wife had said, the husband immediately recounted. They touched, they broke, they robbed. No one here has freedom. Kenny was extremely surprised when he heard it. Those were the words the man had said on the phone. At this time, the people around were curious and gathered in front of the house. Steven tried to calm the people down, asking everyone to return home before it got dark. Meanwhile, Jim went into the woods alone to meet Randall as promised. There, Jim discovered that Randall had taken Donna hostage. Randall thought that Donna might be a government spy. Randall had seen them carrying a monster's body to cover up. Monsters were rumored to be immortal and could not be killed so easily. Although Donna tried to explain, Randall still did not care. Jim was about to untie Donna when Randall rushed over to stop him. At this time, Steven arrived in time, pointing a gun at Randall, forcing him to surrender. It was getting darker and darker, and the monsters were about to appear. They were about to drive back to the village, but Randall suddenly threw away the key. He was interested in seeing who was the government spy. The group had no choice but to hide in the car. Luckily, Steven had brought along the vial of the monster's secretion, so he smeared it on the bullets and loaded them into the gun. Steven wanted to test whether the bullets could kill the monsters. Late that night, the monsters began to emerge from the forest, as usual. However, they did not approach the car, but surrounded it. Suddenly, the scary music started again. There was a sound like a crash from below. Randall was so scared that he broke the window and ran away. The others saw this, and also made their way to the car. Steven tried to stay, firing bullets at the monsters, but they did not seem to be injured at all. At this time, Jim successfully started the car, helping them escape death by a hair's breadth. Meanwhile, Randall unfortunately ran deep into the forest. He was attacked by countless cicadas, flying straight at him. At this time in the village, a man named Reggie suddenly went crazy, constantly saying that it was coming. Everyone would die. Upstairs, Mari suddenly discovered that the area was full of flying cicadas. They attacked, causing Mari to suddenly have a seizure. Mari screamed in pain. Her eyes turned a terrifying white. Christy was extremely worried, but did not know what to do. The disease then began to spread to the others. Julia, who was at home, suddenly showed similar symptoms. It seemed that they were being tortured in their subconscious. At this time, Elgin finally told about the dream he had before coming to this town. At that time, Elgin met a boy dressed in white. The boy repeated a sentence. They touch, they break, they rob, no one here has freedom. While the people around did not understand what it meant, a woman nearby suddenly heard these sentences that sounded very familiar. The woman said that this was a part of the ancient poem that she had heard when she was a child. Steven was shocked after hearing it. The next morning, the whole village was silent. Julia and Mari had not woken up yet. Donna and a few others went into the forest to search. They found Randall lying unconscious in the middle of the forest. But when everyone touched him, Randall suddenly screamed in horror. At this time, Julia and Mari were also in the same state. Steven could not bear it, so he decided to go to Sarah, hoping that Sarah could find a solution. They then went deep into the forest, looking for the ancient ruin where Steven had gotten lost at first. Sarah now suddenly felt extremely painful. Her nose was bleeding continuously. Sarah said that Steven was the one who brought the monster to the village. The monster was extremely excited and would not stop. The monster wanted everyone to suffer, unless the music box was destroyed. Otherwise, everyone would die. Steven was extremely confused after hearing this. He did not know where the music box came from and how to destroy it. Meanwhile, Jade, wanting to find out the truth behind the circular symbol, went alone to the monster's cave. Jade ventured inside to explore. After a while of groping in the dark, Jade finally reached the center of the cave. Jade had just stepped into the middle of the room when the mysterious children suddenly appeared. They lay on the rocks, muttering some kind of spell. Jade looked up at the cave and discovered that a secret secret passage had opened. However, when he looked back, the children had disappeared. The passage above was also sealed. As for Tabby, after seeing the pictures that Victor had drawn, Tabby suspected that what Victor's mother had said years ago might be true. Finding the tower and saving the children might be the key to escaping the village. Tabby wanted Victor to take her to the tower. Jim was worried that his wife might be in danger. However, Tabby still wanted to take a risk. Victor then took Tabby into the forest, to a large tree with bottles hanging above it. In the middle of the tree trunk was a deep hole. Victor said that this was a special teleportation gate. Victor's mother had tried to go inside, but she was killed before she could do so. Tabby hugged Victor and thanked him, before crawling into the hole and disappearing without a trace. As for Stephen, after learning the truth that he was the cause of the tragedy in the village, Stephen was extremely remorseful and regretful. Donna therefore went to comfort Stephen. Donna believed that Stephen would definitely find a solution. Stephen then decided to go into the forest again, determined to find the music box that Sarah had mentioned. At that moment, Reggie suddenly appeared from somewhere, holding a gun pointed straight at Stephen. Reggie seemed to be controlled by someone. His mouth kept apologizing, but his hand still pulled the trigger. Stephen was unfortunately shot in the shoulder. He had no other choice but to take down Reggie before he could do anything more. Stephen then went to the ancient ruins. He used a lighter to light the torch. Unexpectedly, the illusion from the day before appeared again. Stephen discovered Julia and the others were tied up inside. They kept screaming in pain as if being tortured by someone. The terrifying music suddenly started again. The music box appeared before his eyes. Stephen's dead wife also appeared. His wife advised Stephen to give up, not to waste his efforts, because they would all die. Stephen held his ground, turned around and smashed the music box into pieces. Julia and the others suddenly woke up. They had returned to normal, no longer possessed by the monster. Jim was extremely happy to see his daughter awake. They did not know that Tabby had now lost her way, in a very strange place. Tabby went deep into the forest and found a lighthouse right in front of her. It turned out that the tower that Victor's mother had mentioned was referring to this lighthouse. Tabby then walked up the stairs and went straight to the top of the tower. There, Tabby met a boy in a white outfit. The boy apologized before suddenly pushing Tabby down. When Tabby woke up, she found herself in the hospital. The female doctor said that a group of climbers had found Tabby unconscious in the woods and brought her to the hospital. Tabby was shocked to realize that this was indeed the outside world. After all, Tabby had really escaped the nightmare town. The female nurse said that she had been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. She had no identification on her, so they had no idea who Tabby was. The hospital therefore called the police to help investigate her background. Tabby did not want to involve the police, so as soon as the female nurse left, she secretly changed her clothes and quietly left the hospital. While wandering on the street, Tabby suddenly saw a child dressed in white standing across the street, staring at her. Tabby quickly ran across the street, but when she got there, the child had already disappeared. Meanwhile, in the nightmare town, Julie and Ethan, after hearing that their mother left alone into the woods, were extremely surprised. The 2 children blamed Jim for letting Tabby leave without stopping them. Jim realized that he was wrong and decided to go into the woods alone to find his wife. Stephen, knowing what happened, tried to dissuade them. He told them about his previous trip with Sarah. They reached a tree filled with spiderwebs, then saw the lighthouse from afar, but could not get close to it. Despite being warned, Jim still insisted on going. Kenny saw this and decided to go with Jim. Kenny did not want the 2 children to lose both their parents at the same time. At this time, suddenly there was the sound of a window breaking in a nearby house. They went to check and found Jade lying on the floor. Around him was many shirts that formed a strange symbol. Ever since returning from the cave, Jade seemed to have become a different person. He was always mumbling to himself about some symbol. Seeing this, Stephen and Kenny took Jade to the infirmary. At this time, a girl named Fatima was living in the shared house. After being pregnant with Ellis's child, she had been feeling unwell recently. She kept vomiting for no apparent reason. Fatima thought she was just having morning sickness, so she didn't pay much attention. Turning back to Tabby, after wandering on the street, Tabby borrowed a phone from someone nearby to call her mother. Hearing the mother's voice made Tabby extremely emotional. Tabby realized that she had really escaped the nightmare town. Tabby's family had been missing for months, and the police were also actively searching for them. Tabby wanted to go back to her mother, but thinking about her family still trapped inside the town, Tabby decided to find a way to go back there again to rescue them. Meanwhile, Jim had packed his things and was going into the woods to find his wife. Kenny went to the restaurant to say goodbye to his mother before leaving. Kenny didn't know that this would be the last time he would see his mother. After the storm, the town started becoming strange. All the vegetables were damaged, causing a serious food shortage. The townspeople went to Kenny's mother's house, broke into the warehouse to steal the remaining food. Randall even went to the barn to catch a goat to butcher. Victor and Ethan saw it and immediately ran to stop him. Victor then pulled out a gun and threatened him. Stephen saw this and quickly ran over to make peace. He thought that the cattle were the source of eggs and milk. If they were killed, the townspeople would quickly have nothing to eat. Randall left angrily when he heard this. At this time, Tabby went to the church in town to talk to the priest about her problems. Suddenly, Tabby remembered the box that Victor had given her before leaving. Inside were the food packages that Victor had prepared. Tabby accidentally looked at the bottom of the box and discovered an address written there. It was Victor's previous residence. Tabby quickly ran to the address and met an old man. This old man was none other than Victor's father in the past. When the old man saw his son's box, he was extremely shocked. Meanwhile, on Elgin's side, after seeing the ghost of a strange woman in the bathroom, Elgin was extremely scared and did not dare to sleep because he was worried that the woman would appear again. While talking to an old woman at the communal house, Elgin suddenly saw the ghost of that woman standing in front of him. The woman slowly approached, causing Elgin to wake up in fear. It turned out to be just a nightmare. However, Elgin still did not know who the woman really was. On Jim and Kenny's side, after more than half a day of walking deep into the forest, they suddenly discovered wooden stakes with extremely strange human figures carved on them. Following the stakes, the two of them came to an abandoned village. Jim realized that this place could be used to avoid monsters at night. Therefore, they decided to stop here to rest. That night, Jim felt worried about his two children at home. Jim did not know that in the town at this time, the monsters were acting abnormally, never before seen. They came to open the barn door, causing the animals to scatter everywhere. Stephen saw it and ran out with Jade to hold the animals back. Kenny's mother and Victor, when they discovered the incident, also ran out to help despite the danger. At this time, only Julia and Ethan were left in the house. Ethan saw his favorite goat wandering outside and opened the door to bring it in. But unexpectedly, the monster was already waiting. Julia saw it and quickly grabbed Ethan's hand and ran away. The monster immediately chased after them. As soon as they reached the door, the two unexpectedly met Sarah. Sarah immediately took Ethan and Julia into the bushes to hide. The monster couldn't find them, so she screamed a few times, causing more and more of her accomplices to come. Luckily, Randall on the bus saw what was happening and turned on the lights to lure the monsters over. Sarah's group took advantage of the opportunity to run away and get on the bus. Stephen's side, seeing the danger, asked everyone to quickly bring the livestock into the house, and she would bring the rest back to the barn. Kenny's mother didn't want Stephen to do this alone, so she decided to help him. The two quickly brought the animals to the barn. They then ran into the warehouse to hide before the monsters arrived. Thinking they were safe, a group of monsters were waiting inside. They rushed to capture Stephen, then forced Stephen to watch Kenny's mother being torn apart right in front of him. Stephen was extremely angry but could do nothing. The next morning, Jade went into the warehouse to check and was horrified to see Kenny's mother's body had all her organs eaten. However, Stephen was somehow still alive. After being untied, he ran to hug Kenny's mother tightly and kept apologizing. Kenny's mother's death shocked the whole town. Jade felt strange and did not understand why the monsters spared Stephen. Meanwhile, Jim and Kenny, while resting in the abandoned village, accidentally found a lot of fresh vegetables growing along the river. This amount could meet the scarce food needs. They were extremely happy, so they collected them all and brought them back to the village. But when they arrived and saw everyone's sad faces, Kenny was surprised to learn that his mother had passed away. Kenny sadly went to the restaurant alone. Nurse Christie tried to comfort him, but was also chased away by Kenny. At this time, the radio inside the restaurant played the familiar music every day. Kenny was angry and rushed over to smash it into pieces. After knowing what happened last night, Donna immediately went to blame Stephen. Donna thought that Stephen had sacrificed an innocent life just for a few cattle. Meanwhile, at the communal house, Fatima continued to have a stomachache. It had been more than 4 days since she had eaten anything. The teeth in her mouth kept breaking for unknown reasons. Worried about the fetus in her womb, Fatima went to the clinic with Ellis for a checkup. After Mari's diagnosis, she thought the child was normal. As for Fatima's condition, it was probably just because she was nervous when she was pregnant for the first time. Ellis breathed a sigh of relief after hearing that, then took Fatima home. room. Entering the room, Fatima discovered that there were baskets of vegetables that had spoiled a few days ago nearby. Fatima was suddenly attracted to these things, so she grabbed them and ate them greedily. Meanwhile, in the chapel, Nurse Dristy was changing clothes and applying makeup to Kenny's mother's body with Jade. Sarah also came to help. After everything was done, Kenny went to see his mother for the last time. He deeply regretted choosing to leave instead of staying to protect his mother. Kenny's mother's funeral was held afterwards. Many people in the town came to pay their respects. Stephen didn't want this to happen again. He had already prepared a plan for the monsters in his head. Turning back to Tabby, when she woke up, she found herself lying on the sofa. The old man said that Tabby had passed out on the porch. Tabby then told the old man about Victor and about the nightmare town, where monsters would appear every night to hunt the living. The old man listened and didn't believe what Tabby said. The old man's wife and 2 children had disappeared many years ago. The old man also had no hope. Tabby tried to prove what she said. Tabby told him about the ghosts of the children and about the lighthouse in the forest. When the old man heard this, his face suddenly changed. The old man said that before his wife disappeared, she also heard voices in her head. The voices said that his wife was the one chosen to save the children on the lighthouse. Only by saving them would the curse disappear. The old man then took Tabby to the basement of the house. There, it was filled with paintings that the old man's wife had drawn before she disappeared. Tabby was shocked to realize that they were all scenes from the nightmarish town. The ghosts of the strange children that Tabby saw, and even the mysterious boy in white. Meanwhile, in the town, Stephen called his son Ellis and discussed his plan. Stephen took out the protective stone and said that if the monsters were afraid of this, what would happen if we placed the stones in front of the cave entrance? Would the monsters be trapped below forever? Stephen had just finished speaking when Donna suddenly appeared. When Donna heard about the plan, she immediately objected, saying that it was too risky. Donna did not want to lose anyone else because of this stupid plan. Even though everyone did not agree, Stephen still wanted to carry out this plan alone. He then went to the bus and asked Randall to switch seats with him tonight. Stephen wanted to sit on the bus and observe the monsters to see what they were really up to. As for Fatima, her strange behavior became more and more severe. Every time she smelled food, Fatima felt nauseous, but then she ran out to the garbage pile in the yard, dug up rotten vegetables and ate them voraciously. Unfortunately, this scene was seen by an old lady in the communal house. Fatima was afraid that the old lady would tell the others about this. However, the old lady later went to see Fatima and tried to comfort her. The old lady thought that the strange behavior was just because Fatima was too worried about the pregnancy in her belly. To help Fatima feel more at ease, the old lady then suggested a tarot card reading. However, when Fatima asked if the baby in her belly was okay, suddenly a black crow from outside crashed straight into the window, then hit its head on the wall and died instantly. Meanwhile, Kenny went with Christy and a few villagers to the abandoned village in the forest last time. They came back here to collect more fresh vegetables to bring back for storage. While everyone was busy working, Jade just sat there doing nothing. Lately, Jade's spirit has been a bit unstable, constantly cursing the people around him. Jade then went to a bush to go to the toilet, that he suddenly saw the body of a man hanging on a tree. When Jade just walked over, the man suddenly moved, causing Jade to scream in surprise. The others heard and rushed over. However, when Jade looked back, the body had disappeared. Jade felt scared and wanted to return to town immediately. However, it was almost dark now. Kenny advised him to stay overnight in the village. However, Jade still refused and left alone. Christy saw this and quickly ran over to stop him. While walking, Christy suddenly stepped on an animal trap. The accident seriously injured Christy's leg. Christy was in great pain. Kenny and the others saw this and quickly ran over, trying to get Christy's foot out of the trap. At this time, Jade saw an illusion of the man from earlier. The man was holding a skull and slowly walked over. Christy quickly calmed Jade down and helped him escape the illusion. After escaping the trap, they brought Christy into the house before it got dark. On this side, Tabby was in the old man's house when she suddenly heard a very familiar sound outside. Tabby walked out to the backyard and found glass jars hanging on a tree. Tabby realized that this scene was identical to the place where the portal that Victor had taken her to was located. The old man said that his wife used to love decorating this. However, this tree was just a copy. The original was a larger tree several miles away. Tabby thought that it might hold clues to the nightmare town. Tabby asked the old man to drive her there. On the way, Tabby suddenly discovered a necklace in the car. The strange thing was that it was exactly the same necklace Tabby had found found in the warehouse inside the nightmare town. The old man said that the necklace was a gift from his wife before. Tabby was shocked when she heard that. Tabby wondered if she had really escaped the town, or was still in its own illusion. In a panic, Tabby asked the old man to stop the car. The old man did not want to and continued driving. While the two were arguing, suddenly a car from afar rushed straight at them. The accident left the old man seriously injured. Tabby woke up to find herself in an ambulance. They were being taken to the hospital by doctors. At this time, something strange suddenly happened. On the way, the driver discovered a large tree blocking the road in front of them. In the sky at this time, many black crows appeared. Tabby realized that this scene was very similar to when her whole family got lost in the nightmare town. The driver tried to call the hospital, but there was no signal. It was almost dark now. Tabby warned them about the man-eating monsters that were about to appear. However, no one believed what Tabby said. Meanwhile, in town, Ethan received a strange phone call. On the other end was a mysterious voice, saying that Ethan's mother was in an ambulance and was in danger. Ethan quickly told Jim about this, but Jim angrily smashed the phone, thinking that this thing was just saying things that were not true. That night, Stephen went to the bus with Randall. Randall felt strange when it was dark, but the monsters did not appear, as usual. While he was thinking, suddenly an ambulance from outside suddenly drove into town. Ethan saw it and quickly opened the door to chase after it. Ethan said that his mother was in that car. Stephen and Jim quickly took Ethan into the house. Meanwhile, the driver was driving and discovered a girl lying unconscious in the middle of the road. Tabby realized that it was a group of monsters in disguise and warned them, but no one believed her. The policewoman also handcuffed Tabby to the car so that Tabby could not leave. The driver and the assistant then approached the monster. As soon as they arrived, it suddenly woke up and slashed them, killing them on the spot. Only the policewoman realized what had happened, but it was too late. The monsters approaching the policewoman were getting more and more numerous. The policewoman saw the communal house with the lights on and rushed over. The people inside discovered the incident and curiously went to the window to observe. At this time, the policewoman was continuously shooting at the monsters. Unfortunately, a bullet was deflected, hitting a short-haired girl standing at the window, seriously injuring her. The policewoman was then lucky to run into the house. When she discovered that she had accidentally caused the accident, the policewoman was extremely regretful and scared. Since Christy was not present, Mari took the place of the nurse, trying to stop the bleeding for the short-haired girl. However, due to the severity of the injury and the lack of surgical tools, the short-haired girl died of blood loss shortly after. At this time, outside, Jim, Randall and Stephen ran to the ambulance. Jim was extremely surprised to see that his wife was still alive. Tabby was currently locked in handcuffs. Randall saw this and quickly ran back to the bus to get the lock-picking tool. However, when Randall just turned back, he was suddenly blocked by the monsters. Randall quickly threw the tool to Stephen, but when he was about to run away, hundreds of cicadas appeared in front of Randall. Stephen gave the tool to Jim to open the handcuffs and then drove the car to the communal house, but he found that the key on the car had disappeared. At this time, a monster appeared, holding the key in his hand and giving it to Stephen, happily saying that Stephen could take it because they had Randall to replace him. Stephen looked back and found that Randall was surrounded by monsters. Randall was scared and cried for help, but Stephen couldn't do anything, so he grabbed the key and ran away, leaving Randall with the bloodthirsty monsters. The car then drove to the communal house. Stephen brought Tabby and Victor's father inside. Everyone was shocked to see Tabby after many days of being missing. Although she was injured and extremely tired, Tabby still tried to tell Jim about her journey outside. Tabby thought that the boy in white must have had some purpose in taking her out of town. On Elgin's side, while sitting alone upstairs, he saw the ghost of the mysterious woman. It suddenly turned its head and left. Elgin saw that and chased after it. Elgin heard the woman's voice as if she was trying to call for help. At this time, a man passing by bumped into Elgin. When Elgin looked back, the woman disappeared. At this time, downstairs in the communal house, the people in the house discovered that Randall had been taken to the car by the monsters. However, Randall seemed to be still alive. Seeing that, Stephen quickly brought Randall into the house. Randall's body was covered with wounds caused by the monsters, but for some reason they spared Randall's life. Randall was furious when he saw Stephen, constantly cursing Stephen for leaving him behind for fear of death. Meanwhile, At Victor's place, he was with Sarah. Victor wanted to tell Sarah about the past, when the nightmare town had just begun. At that time, Victor was the only survivor in this terrifying place. In just one night, all the residents in the town were brutally murdered. The mysterious boy in white was the only person who was Victor's friend at that time. Because he couldn't bury all the corpses, Victor took the items associated with them to remember them. A watch, or a cigarette box. All were horrifying memories that Victor could not forget. Suddenly, Victor discovered that none of these items belonged to Christopher. Victor seemed to remember something. His face suddenly became extremely scared. Sarah tried to comfort him. Victor then revealed that Christopher was also a resident of the town. Christopher used to be a very cheerful and friendly person, until he explored about the strange circular symbol. That was also when Christopher changed, became crazy, and killed all the people in the town. Victor once saw Christopher talking to a puppet doll. It was also the doll Victor had seen underground, where the monsters lived. Victor still remembered very clearly. Its name was Jasper. At this time, in the communal house, the body of the short-haired girl was wrapped in a towel and placed in the room. It was planned to be buried tomorrow morning. Fatima took advantage of the moment when everyone had left to approach the body. Fatima saw the blood flowing from the wound. Unable to control herself, she quickly wiped it with her hand and put it in her mouth. Her face looked extremely excited. The next day, Kenny's group, who went to get vegetables, also returned to town. Jade was extremely surprised when he heard that Tabby was still alive. He immediately ran to Tabby's house to verify the truth. Meanwhile, Victor went to the communal house. He was very surprised to hear that his father had come here. However, Victor ran away because he was afraid of facing him. Sarah saw this and chased after him. Sarah tried to convince Victor to go back to see his father. The old man must have been very worried about Victor. Victor finally agreed to go back after hearing these words. The two then had an emotional meeting. Victor, who had always been lonely in town, finally met his relatives again. On the villagers' side, after Tabby's return, everyone was very surprised. They asked for a meeting to talk clearly. How Tabby escaped from the town. Tabby then appeared. Faced with hundreds of questions, Tabby told every detail clearly, from how she got into the teleportation tree in the forest, to climbing the lighthouse, and meeting the mysterious boy in white. Fatima was extremely disappointed that Tabby was able to escape from the town, but did not report to the police or do anything to help the people trapped here. Some people started to curse loudly. A bald old man in the group of residents even made a suggestion: send some people to the teleportation tree to verify. Stephen tried to stop him and said that the tree would teleport to an unknown location. The last time Stephen entered, the destination was a deep well in the ancient ruins. However, the bald old man still did not care about Stephen's words. He even said that he would find his own way to the tree. After the crowd dispersed, Ellis went around looking for his girlfriend Fatima. He found Fatima in the garden. It turned out that Fatima had secretly hidden some rotten vegetables for food. When Ellis arrived, she was startled and hid them. However, Fatima's strange behavior could not fool Ellis. Fatima finally told him everything about her strange habits when she started to conceive. Fatima was scared and thought that she would give birth to a monster. As for Tabby, she was feeling sad because of the villagers' words. She wanted to get some help, so she went into the forest with Jade to find the teleportation tree. There were many different bottles hanging on the branches. They found a piece of paper in each bottle. There were 4 random numbers written on them without any rule. While they were thinking about the meaning of the numbers, the bald old man from earlier suddenly appeared. He came to the tree and said that he would go inside. Maybe he would be the next one to escape this damn town. Despite Tabby and Jade's protests, the bald old man entered the hole and disappeared. At this time in the town, the people saw a strange scene and called Stephen come. When Stephen arrived, he found the bald old man stuck in a wall. He was in pain, but could not say anything. He was finally crushed to death. It turned out that the teleportation tree had brought the bald old man to this wall. Just as Stephen said, the teleportation place would be an unknown location. The people around were very scared when they saw this. No one dared to think about going to that tree anymore. The unfortunate events that happened after returning to town made Tabby feel sad and always blamed herself. Tabby thought it was all her fault for giving the townspeople hope and then extinguishing it. Jim tried to comfort his wife, but Tabby did not want to hear those words. The two then started arguing. Their relationship gradually lost its connection. The next morning, Tabby went downstairs and saw Ethan reading a book. Jim went to the abandoned village to get more food. While the mother and son were sitting, there were suddenly footsteps upstairs. Tabby was worried, so she went up to check alone. When she got there, she was startled to find the ghost ghosts of two mysterious children that Tabby had seen before. They walked over and kept repeating a strange language. Tabby panicked and tried to chase them away. Only when Ethan ran up did the two children disappear. As for the couple Fatima and Ellis, after Ellis knew that his girlfriend had strange habits, Ellis tried to encourage her and advised Fatima to go see Christy to check on the child in her womb. At this time, Stephen suddenly visited. Stephen saw Ellis's strange attitude and asked his son to tell the truth. Ellis had no choice but to tell everything. They then quickly took Fatima to the infirmary. As soon as they walked down the hall, they met Elgin. Elgin was holding a camera and took a photo of Fatima as a souvenir. However, a moment after developing the photo, Elgin was startled to discover that behind Fatima was the ghost of the mysterious woman he had met a few days ago. At this moment, she suddenly appeared right behind him. The woman said that if she helped her, she would save everyone. As soon as she finished speaking, the woman disappeared. At this time, at the infirmary, Christy was examining the child in Fatima's belly. However, despite careful observation, Christy could not see any embryo inside. Christy affirmed that Fatima had never been pregnant from the beginning. It was very possible that the symptoms Fatima felt were all just a false pregnancy. This shocked Fatima greatly. She angrily smashed things and left. Meanwhile, at Victor's place, he was planning to find out about the past of this town. Victor then went to the cave where the monsters lived. Victor planned to go down to look for the Jasper doll. Victor's father saw his son going into danger and couldn't stop him, so he followed. The two entered the cave and searched around but couldn't find any dolls. The items Victor had seen before were also gone. Victor didn't give up and continued to go deeper into the cave. The two finally found a room filled with many objects. The Jasper doll was also there. Victor quickly put it in his pocket. At this moment, the father suddenly discovered that in the pile of objects was his wife's scarf from years ago. The father was so emotional that he accidentally made a noise that woke up the monsters. Victor saw this and quickly took his father away before the monsters caught up. The two then returned to the truck, Victor's base. Victor put the doll on the table and said that he had heard it talking to Christopher before about the origin of the nightmare town. If he could make the doll talk again, the mysteries of this town would be cleared up. On this side, Jade was still diligently researching the secrets related to the numbers in the bottles. Jade believed that these numbers were hiding some secret. Stephen said that the last time he went into the forest with Sarah, he also came to a tree with many bottles hanging on it. Jade was very surprised when she heard that and asked Stephen to take her there. After arriving, Jade realized that not only did the tree move, but there was also a place in the forest where bottles like this were hung. Jade quickly brought them back and started comparing. Jade discovered that the series of numbers in the bottles of the two trees were the same. While Jade was telling Tabby about these discoveries, Tabby suddenly saw a drawing of human-shaped wooden stakes in the forest where they found the abandoned village. Tabby was shocked to realize that these were the things that had appeared in her dream when she was a child. It turned out that not only Victor's mother, but Tabby herself had also been warned about this town in her dream, but Tabby did not know. Later, Jade took Tabby to the abandoned village in the forest. At this time, Jim and the others were harvesting vegetables there. Seeing his wife, Jim immediately ran to ask. Tabby told Jim everything. They went to the red rocks near the village. Tabby remembered that in her dream, she was hiding under these rocks. There was something scary chasing her and everyone else. However, every time she tried to look closely at that thing, Tabby woke up from the dream. Jade thought that if Tabby had really seen this town when she was a child, then it was no coincidence that Tabby's whole family was brought here. There must be some connection to this place. Jade thought that if Tabby had really seen this town when she was a child, then it was no coincidence that Tabby's whole family was brought here. There must be some connection to this place. Meanwhile, on Elgin's side, after repeatedly seeing the ghost of the mysterious woman in kimono, Elgin followed the woman's instructions to the basement outside the town. Elgin went down to search, but found nothing unusual. However, as he was about to leave, Elgin suddenly heard a strange sound nearby. Elgin went to check and discovered a mysterious door. Behind it was a dark and gloomy room. In front of the room was the dried corpse of a man. At this moment, the woman in kimono suddenly appeared behind. Elgin understood that this was where everything started. Meanwhile, in the town, a policewoman named Kostar, who had just arrived a few days ago, could not stand the fact that the people were just resigned. No one dared to stand up and find a way to leave this place. Kostar wanted to do something to help everyone. However, after hearing this, Kenny only advised Costar to give up that idea. All the people here had tried everything, but none of them had really succeeded. Kenny, after losing his entire family, no longer wanted to leave. Julia, taking advantage of the time when her parents were not at home, went to see Randall alone. Since the day the monsters attacked, Randall had to stay at the infirmary to treat his wounds. Julia wanted to go for a walk with Randall. Julia suggested that the two of them try driving around the forest to get some fresh air. Randall thought it sounded reasonable, so he followed suit. However, on the way, Randall saw phantom cicadas flying around. They grew more and more numerous, making Randall panic and immediately running into the forest. Julia saw this and immediately chased after her. However, going deeper inside, Julia discovered the ancient ruins that Stephen had been to. Julia was curious and wanted to go there to check. However, Randall suddenly ran over and advised Julia to go back. Meanwhile, at the communal house, after Fatima learned that the pregnancy in her belly was fake, Fatima was extremely depressed and insisted that it was real. Fatima felt something moving in her belly. However, Ellis only advised his girlfriend to rest and calm down. Ellis then went to the kitchen and met the old lady in the communal house. The old lady saw Ellis's worried attitude and guessed that something had happened to Fatima. Ellis had no choice but to tell the old lady everything. At this time, in the room, Fatima suddenly felt extremely painful. Her stomach gradually tightened. Hearing the scream, Ellis rushed over. But at this time, her stomach had returned to normal. Ellis was worried and went to Christy for help. However, Christy did not believe it and thought that Fatima was just having psychological problems. They did not know that at this time at home, Fatima had secretly gone to the vegetable garden, intending to take rotten vegetables for food. Suddenly, the old woman in the communal house passed by, saw the incident, and ran in to try to stop her. Fatima shouted loudly, asking the old woman to leave quickly. Suddenly, Fatima grabbed a pair of scissors nearby and stabbed the old woman in the chest, causing her to stop breathing immediately. When Ellis returned and discovered the incident, he was extremely shocked. Ellis then quickly took Fatima and hid in a hut deep in the forest. Ellis did not want his girlfriend to be captured by the villagers, so he asked Fatima to stay here for a few days. Wait until everything returned to normal and then decide what to do next. Fatima was extremely scared at this time, not understanding why she acted like that. After Ellis left, Fatima suddenly saw the ghost of a mysterious woman in a kimono standing in the corner of the wall. However, in the blink of an eye, the woman had disappeared. At this time, in the town, the villagers discovered the old woman's body lying dead in the vegetable garden. The news quickly spread everywhere. Everyone was extremely worried about who the culprit was. Stephen ordered everyone to return home quickly. He tried to calm them down, advising them not to worry too much. Policewoman Costar volunteered to investigate, questioning everyone in town. However, everyone thought that Sarah was the one who caused this case, just because Sarah had killed someone before. Meanwhile, in Stephen's place, after knowing that Fatima was the culprit, he was extremely shocked. Stephen wanted to find a way to help Fatima escape the death penalty. However, Ellis thought that they should tell the truth to the villagers and hoped that they would forgive Fatima, because this was just an unwanted accident. While the two were talking, Donna suddenly walked in and saw the strange attitude of the father and son. Stephen could not hide it and immediately told Donna the whole truth. Stephen thought that if he used his words, he could make the villagers believe and forgive Fatima, like Sarah's case before. However, Donna immediately denied it and said that Stephen's words were no longer trusted by many people like before. They would definitely sentence the girl to death. After Donna left, Stephen asked Ellis to quickly pack up and take Fatima to escape. Victor was trying every way to talk to the doll, but it was completely motionless, not able to talk at all. Victor was angry, so he went to Sarah and told her everything. Victor felt disappointed when he couldn't remember the content of the conversation between the doll and Christopher. What did they talk about? This was later found out by Tabby. Tabby went to see Victor and helped him remember the past. After a while of trying to ponder the past events, Victor finally remembered. The place where he witnessed the talking doll was in the basement of the church. They quickly went there. As soon as they stepped down, the scene from the past suddenly appeared before their eyes. Only then did Victor remember that it was not the doll talking, but the mysterious boy in white. The boy was telling Christopher about the secret of this town, but Christopher was extremely angry after hearing it. Victor still clearly remembered a sentence the boy said. To find the answer, he had to return to the starting point. The children born in the dark were also murdered in the dark. Their bodies created the teleportation tree. The only way to save the children was to go through that tree. At this time, Julia had returned home alone to meet her younger brother Ethan. Julia wanted to go into the forest with Ethan to the ruins she had seen the day before. Julia said that it seemed like there was some invisible force that wanted her to go into the ruins. Julia then slowly walked over, but as soon as she stepped in, she suddenly had a seizure. In Julia's mind, she was standing in a cellar. Julia saw herself, Randall, and Mari, 3 people tied up and screaming in panic, just like when they were unconscious last time. Julia panicked, covered her ears and closed her eyes. When Julia opened her eyes, the illusion had disappeared. Instead, in the corner of the wall appeared an old man who was tied up. The old man asked Julia to lower a rope down a nearby well because someone needed help. Julia immediately did as she was told. Surprisingly, the person who was saved was Stephen. It turned out that when Stephen was stuck at the bottom of the well, someone threw a rope down to rescue him. It turned out that the mysterious person was Julia. Julia then went through the door to a dark cave. Julia heard her mother's panicked crying, mixed with the voices of children speaking a strange language. Julia rushed to the source of the sound, but immediately woke up. It turned out that Costar and Kenny had taken Julia away from the ruins. Julia was extremely scared and hugged Ethan. Meanwhile, Stephen had secretly taken Ellis into the forest to Fatima's hut. Ellis had prepared everything to escape with Fatima. However, when he arrived, he was surprised to find that the door to the hut was wide open. Fatima had also disappeared without a trace. It turned out that a few hours earlier, Elgin had come to see Fatima and taken her to the cellar outside of town. Elgin said that this was Fatima's new hideout. Fatima thought that Ellis was below, so she went down, but suddenly realized that it was all a trap. Fatima tried to run away, but was immediately held back by Elgin. Elgin then calmed Fatima down and said that he had no bad intentions. Elgin said that the child in Fatima's belly must be born healthy. It was not Fatima's child, but if it was born successfully, all the people in the town would be freed from this place. It was the woman in the kimono who told Elgin that. Elgin believed and followed the woman's words. Elgin even gave Fatima his blood to drink, all because he wanted the child in Fatima's belly to be healthy. That night, Sarah was at home when she suddenly had a severe headache. The strange voice in Sarah's head suddenly rang out again. The next day, Sarah went to see Stephen and Ellis and told them about the voice in her head. Sarah said that Fatima did not run away but was captured by a villager. Fatima was being in a panic now. Everything would end if she couldn't find Fatima in time. Ellis was very worried after hearing that. Stephen saw that and made a plan with Donna. They then gathered the townspeople and announced that Fatima was missing. Everyone was very surprised after hearing that. Everyone thought that Fatima was also a victim being held by someone. Stephen asked the townspeople to split up and search for Fatima's whereabouts. At this time, Victor felt extremely angry after remembering everything. Victor then took an axe and went to the teleportation tree, intending to cut it down. Suddenly, a mysterious boy in white appeared to stop him. The boy said that the teleportation tree must not be damaged, because it was very important. Victor realized that the boy had also changed. He was no longer as small as before. Victor wanted the boy to tell him all the secrets of the town, as well as how to escape from here, just like when he told Christopher. However, the boy just silently left after hearing. Meanwhile, at Fatima's place, after many days of special care, Fatima's belly had now become much bigger. Fatima was in great pain trying to find a way to escape the cellar. Suddenly, she discovered a secret door under the floor, but no matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't open. At this time, the ghost of a woman in a kimono suddenly appeared, walked over and covered Fatima's mouth with her hand. At this time, Tabby was with Julia outside the town to find Fatima's whereabouts. Suddenly, Tabby discovered in the distance, the ghost of a child was reaching out to ask Tabby to follow it. Tabby quickly chased after her to the secret cellar. When she went down, Tabby saw Victor there. Victor then recounted the whole story. After hearing the conversation between the boy in white and Christopher, Victor went home and told his mother everything about the children and the moving tree. After hearing this, the mother went to the tree alone and unfortunately became a victim of the monsters. Victor thought that it was his fault that his mother died. Tabby then went to comfort him, but as soon as she touched Victor, Tabby suddenly saw an illusion of Victor's mother's past, seeing his mother lost in the forest and being eaten by the monsters. Tabby was extremely scared and screamed. Victor quickly took Tabby home to rest. Tabby then told Jim and Jade about this. Tabby thought that the illusion she saw was probably the clue that the children were trying to convey. It was definitely related to the moving tree. Jade said that the last time he went down to the monster's lair, he also saw the children lying on a rock. They looked up at the ceiling, where the tree roots connected together, forming a complete teleportation tree. It was all the same as what the boy in white had told Christopher before. Jim heard that and immediately guessed that the jars hanging on the tree were the puzzles they needed to solve if they wanted to find the secret behind this town. Meanwhile, Stephen, Ellis, and the others began to see Elgin's strange attitude. They suspected that Elgin was hiding something. They immediately planned to investigate Elgin. That day, Elgin was packing his things and preparing to go to Fatima's place when he was stopped by Stephen. Stephen took Elgin into the room and began to question him. Elgin did not hide it and immediately admitted that he was keeping Fatima. However, Elgin believed that what he did was right. If Elgin successfully gave birth to the child in her womb, they would all be able to return. Sarah advised Elgin not to believe in unreal forces because she had been bewitched by them the last time, leading to her killing her own younger brother. Ellis angrily rushed over to question Fatima's whereabouts, but Elgin still refused to say anything. Seeing this, Stephen immediately returned home to get the torture box, determined to make Elgin confess, despite everyone's objections. Stephen asked them all to go out. Then, Stephen entered the room alone, tied Elgin up, and began to threaten him. Elgin was still stubborn. Even if he died, he would not say anything. Stephen angrily hit Elgin's hand with a hammer, causing Elgin to scream in pain. At this time, Co-Star happened to pass by, heard the scream, and immediately ran up to check. Co-Star was extremely angry when he saw the scene before him. Stephen then took Co-Star out of the room and began to explain. At this time, Sarah suddenly walked in alone to see Elgin. Elgin said that Stephen had helped him once, so this time Sarah would not make things difficult for Stephen. After speaking, Sarah immediately rushed to Elgin. A scream rang out. The people outside heard and rushed in, discovering that Elgin had lost an eye. Sarah finally forced Elgin to reveal where Fatima was being held. Meanwhile, at Fatima's place, her belly was getting bigger and bigger. Something inside was moving. Fatima was scared and picked up a piece of glass, intending to destroy the fetus. Suddenly, the woman in kimono appeared to stop her. She said that the time had come, then began to pull the fetus out of the girl's belly. By the time Stephen and Ellis arrived, it was too late. The cellar under the floor was wide open. Fatima said that the woman in kimono had taken her child down below. Fatima fearfully revealed that she had learned the true identity of the monsters in town. They were all fathers and mothers in the past, who sacrificed their children in exchange for immortality. Stephen knew that the basement would hold many mysteries of the town. He was not afraid of danger, so he went down there alone. At this time, Tabby was still trying to find the meaning behind the numbers in the glass jars. Jade said that he had put together everything about numerology, astrology, even thousands of different calculations, but still could not figure out the meaning of those numbers. At this time, Jim suddenly had an idea about the 12 notes on the piano keyboard. The numbers would represent a note. Jade was surprised when she heard this. Jade did not think and immediately went back to open the pieces of paper to check. After trying to put them together according to the notes, Jade began to hum a strange melody that he had never heard before. Tabby suddenly had an idea. Try to go to the teleportation tree and hum this melody to see if anything happened. The three of them then arrived. Jade started playing the piano and played a melody. At this moment, in the distance, the ghosts of mysterious children slowly appeared and walked towards them, but only Tabby and Jade saw them. A child walked up and knelt before Tabby. The child spoke a strange language again, but this time, Tabby seemed to understand it. Tabby couldn't hold back her tears and left. Jim was worried and asked Tabby. Tabby said that she recalled everything. The reason why only she and Jade saw the ghosts of children, as well as the reason why they were haunted by scary dreams, was because the two of them had been to this town once before. Tabby was Victor's mother, and Jade was Christopher. They tried to save the children but failed, causing the two of them to be brought here over and over again, like a loop. Meanwhile, at Stephen's place, when he went down the underground tunnel, he saw a horrifying scene. A woman in a kimono was standing around the monsters. In her hand was the embryo of a newborn baby. However, it suddenly moved. Its body gradually became larger. Finally, the thing inside came out. It was none other than the monster that Stephen had killed and dissected. At this time, Jim's side in the forest was extremely shocked after hearing the truth from Tabby. Jim was standing when he suddenly heard Julia scream. Julia ran over in panic, saying that something had happened in town. They needed to run away as fast as possible. Before Jim could understand what was happening, a strange old man suddenly appeared from somewhere. The old man's eyes were just a deep black. Jim held a piece of wood and asked the old man to stay away. However, the old man still Bill walked over, one hand tightly strangling Jim's neck. Julia tried to save her father, but was immediately knocked away. The old man whispered a familiar sentence into Jim's ear. Jim's wife shouldn't have dug that hole. Jim immediately recognized this as the voice he had heard on the radio earlier. Before he could react, the old man slashed Jim's neck, killing him instantly. That was the entire content of the movie. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you in the next videos. Bye.